Now joining me is Conrad Shaw and Dea Schlossberg. They worked on some amazing movies before, including How to Let Go of the World and Love All the Things That Climate Can't Change. That's the Josh Fox movie that Dea helped to produce, the story of plastic. But now they've got a new movie coming out called Bootstraps. Conrad and Dea, welcome to the Young Turks.
Thanks. Nice to be here.
Yeah, great to have you guys. So first, let me just dive in and ask you, Dea, what's Bootstraps about?
Bootstraps is looking at how 11 households all over the US do when given a basic income for 2 years, no strings attached.
Oh, fascinating. All right, Conrad, for the folks at home that don't know, what is universal basic income?
Universal basic income is, a lot of people don't actually know that that's essentially what Andrew Yang is running on for president, if you've heard of him.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do know that.
Yeah,
because he says it all the time.
But I've run into a lot of people who don't actually link the two together. But basically, it's that everyone deserves a floor of income that's guaranteed and unconditional in society that allows for a basic level of survival living that is not tied to selling your labor or fulfilling any sort of conditions.
Okay, so Dea, you guys followed people who actually did get universal basic income, right?
Yeah, there are 21 individuals and 11 households all over the US. We tried to replicate basically the demographics of the US in who we're following. So a range of geography and age and background and income level, from homeless to solidly middle class. And we're capturing all sorts of incredible stories.
Yeah, so I can't wait to see how this turned out. I'm deeply curious, and so is Andrew Yang. I'm sure he's watching right now. But before we get to that, one more question about how this all got set up. How'd you guys even do this? I mean, who did someone fund the universal basic income for these particular families?
Yeah, it wasn't easy. The project itself was sort of bootstrapped. It was something we had an idea for 3 years ago, and we decided we didn't want to have a bunch of talking heads discussing it. You know, we had a lot of interviews with experts and things, but we decided it'd be best to show UBI. And so we started with a crowd fund and a whole lot of personal debt, and then we started cobbling together enough to stagger some of the stories in. And then eventually we got a couple larger donors, 2 years later, that allowed us to bring everyone else into the trial.
All right, now without further ado, what happened?
So a little bit of a spoiler, but everybody is doing better than they were when they started, in a lot of respects. Certainly financially, not a big surprise to a lot of people who just think it's kind of common sense. But yeah, it's consistent with the other studies that have shown that health outcomes improve, education improves, substance use goes down, people don't work any less.
I think the really special thing to me, though, is about the way that we're showing this compared to the other trials like Stockton and the Canada ones, is that we're telling the full story. We're with them for 2 years, and it's a real reminder that, stuff happens in life, and it's still hard and people struggle, but here's what it could look like if you have something coming in every week. If you know it's going to be there, here's what it might look like for someone who is a young family in Montana or farmers in Mississippi or whatever.
It helps weather life's events and life's setbacks.
So, I mean, this really is spot on for what Yang is proposing. It's $1,000 a month, just like he's saying. Although you do get more for kids, you get $334 a month for each child that they have, right? So, look, I don't think anybody's going to be overly surprised that their standard of living is a little bit better, because that's a nice amount of extra money to have for a family, especially when they weren't expecting it and it's on top of what they normally spend. But I guess the question that people have is, yes, but when did they turn into bums?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Conrad.
I mean, that's part of the design of the project, is to address the human nature question of UBI, and not particularly to sell UBI, but to let it speak for itself if it works or if it doesn't. And you run into two questions with UBI, and one is like how you're going to pay for it and all the money stuff. We're not really dealing with that with Bootstraps. We're dealing with the other one, which is, won't people just be lazy or do drugs or, play video games? And I mean, if you really take some time to think about it and think about yourself in that situation, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense that someone would sit and stare at the wall for 50 years because they're able to. It's not really how human beings work. People want to matter. They want to grow. At least that's what we're finding.
Right.
It's funny, when we started the project, we went and just interviewed people on the street. This was several years ago, before basic income was kind of a household term, and asked people if they had heard of it, what they think of it, what they would do with it. And almost across the board, people's initial reaction was that, worrying, like, won't that disincentivize people from doing something? And then without fail, we would ask them, well, what would you do if you were given $1,000 a month? And they all had amazing answers.
I'd say it was like 50-50. I'd say like half of people said, oh, that'd be great. And half people said, well, people will just leech off of it. But then like 99.9%, except the people that were joking, had a great answer for what they would do. So there was this huge disconnect that you see, where everyone has a really good plan for themselves that's justifiable for the economy and for everything, but they're worried about what other people will do. And that's part of that polarization in America, like not understanding each other.
So that's something that we really hope Bootstraps can speak to.
Right. That is really interesting. I hadn't thought of that. Like, they're like, oh no, I was spending great, but those other bums, I'm worried about them. And so my favorite assumption about it is that people would use it on drugs. Like, if you gave me an extra $1,000 a month, I don't know that I would spend it well, but I know I wouldn't do meth.
Well, I mean, what people don't seem to understand is that drugs, in a large part, like, it doesn't solve drugs. It's not a panacea for anything. But drugs, in large part, much like video games or overeating or sex, can be escapist. It's a way out when you don't see a way out. So if you give everyone a way forward, then there's less reason to escape into drugs or video games or gambling or whatever. Yeah,
and well, look, if that gives you a sense of what's in those folks' heads who say that. It's projection. Like, I would never assume that if I had an extra $1,000 that I would do way more drugs and dangerous drugs. That never even occurs to me, right? On the other hand, look, I want to talk about if out of is it 21 families, right? Did any of them, like
11? Yeah.
Oh, sorry, 11.
People.
21 people,
so some
11
are families,
families.
some are individuals.
Yeah. So look, I'm telling you, there's at least a portion of it that I would spend, quote unquote, poorly. Like, would I gamble more? Maybe, right? Would I want to have an extra steak dinner? Yeah, definitely, right? And so I don't know that that's poorly. That gives me more enjoyment, and then there's nothing wrong with enjoyment. Although, like, conservatives get mad at that, like, oh, then people would start to enjoy their lives. Yeah. Okay, but it's kind of a weird criticism.
We want people to have. I mean, we're not trying to. The movie is really more Daya's thing, the series, which is exploring UBI. If you follow me online, I'm openly an advocate for UBI, so I won't pretend I'm not. But all those things you just mentioned, well, the gambling, even a little bit too. But like, you buy a steak dinner, that's money back into the economy. These are all. And you're taking care of yourself. It's self-care, and it helps your psychological state. It helps you be a happier person out on the street with me when I walk by you.
So, but guys, we're all 11 families, all rosy, and they all spent it perfectly on balancing their budgets and paying for their kids' schooling, etc. Or was there anything they did where you were like, oh, okay, well, we got to tape it. What are we going to do?
Well, a lot of them still have about 6 months left to go, so they still have some room to make decisions either way. But for the most part, I would say it hasn't drastically changed how people decide what to do with their money. It has mostly, like I said earlier, has helped people weather the bumps that come up in life.
It helped them follow through on the things they wanted to do too. It really accelerated the things they wanted in life. I think one of the things we learned a lot. So my role is I designed the trial, and there was a lot that went into deciding how to design the trial as compared to like the Stockton trial or Andrew Yang's dividend or the one in Canada. And one of the things that's very important about UBI that people don't talk about a lot is frequency. The idea of getting it once a month rather than once a year as a lump sum, like the Alaskan dividend, is important because there's something to knowing that everyone's safe at all times. So we actually upped the frequency even more, and we do it on a weekly basis because I've worked enough low-end jobs where I know a bi-weekly check is still leaving people insecure by the end of that 2 weeks, the people in low-end jobs. So you want to know, we have everything. It comes in every single Wednesday, and we have conversations all the time with them where it's like they're planning around Wednesday, and Wednesday is the day that they can make that move or that they can follow through on that thing they need. And if having it be a weekly thing, I think all in all has been better.
Yep. All right, everybody can check out bootstrapsfilm.com, bootstrapsfilm.com. Prepare to be inundated and run over by the Yang Gang. Thank you guys. We appreciate you joining us on the Young Turks.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
The TYT Plus app is now available on iOS and Android. Download to get more TYT content at tyt.com/app.